Hi everyone, this is Sunny. Now today we're going to look at some strategies and introductions about SAT, including writing and language. Now in the following lessons you'll be knowing some of the strategies that most people used in answering SAT questions in Section 1 and Section 2. Now in the first lesson we're going to look at some of the strategies that you'll be watching, including this Lesson 1 Intro to Reading section. Now let's have a look at the content specification. Now, in general, the SAT will be in total 65 minutes, and the word count will be 3,000 words in total and 750 words per passage. So that's actually quite long. For those who are not quite familiar with how SAT look like, you probably will want to ask yourself to do some mock test and time yourself in order to know that you can actually finish everything in the real test. There will be 52 questions in total, and multiple choice include 4 options. In the old SAT, the options include 5 options, and usually the first one will be no change. But in the new SAT, there are only 4 options, and it's seemingly easier. So we usually ask students to somehow eliminate the option that seems to be odd to you. Usually we call the strategy called the odd one, pick the odd one out, but it doesn't work all the time. So it depends on the question type, and we'll be talking about how to answer them in the following passages. And basically everything is passage based. That means the answers are all included in the passage. So you really need to look for the keyword in the passage and see where it is. And usually it will be in synonyms, so you have to find out words that look pretty much the same or that has the same meaning in order to answer them correctly. Now, in contributions of items to scores, words in context will include 10 questions, and commands of evidence will include, again, 10 questions as well. Analysis in history and social studies include 21 questions, and analysis in science include 21 questions. And again, they're all passage-based. It seems like a lot, but for most students, they don't need to actually dig into the knowledge in social science or history or any other subjects in order to answer SAT questions correctly, because most of the content in the passage are common sense. You only need to know the basic things in order to answer all SAT questions. So you don't need to bother yourself to go deeper into history, science, or any other subjects like biology. It's actually not that difficult. Now, the passage content includes US and world literature, and of course it's SAT, so it's mostly about the literature in the US. And there will be 1 passage, 10 questions, and that would account for 20%. As to history and social studies, there will be 2 passages or 1 passage and a pair. And 10 to 11 questions each will be included. That accounts for 40%. And in science, there will be 2 passages or 1 passage and a pair. And again, 10 to 11 questions each will be included, and that accounts for 40%. Now, one special thing about SAT is that there will be graphics. There will be 1 to 2 graphics in 1 history, social studies, and 1 in science passage. For those who have no experience answering graphics-related questions, it would be quite bothering and seemingly confusing. But it's actually not that difficult. Or maybe you can think that it's the easiest one in SAT, because all you need to do is to look at the graph and find out a keyword, as well as the numbers, of course, to match the question and understand what the graphic is talking about, and try to understand the meaning in the context, in the passage as well. And then you'll be able to answer the questions easily. Now, content dimension includes information and ideas. That would include determining explicit and implicit meanings. That means usually there are something that's written in straight away that you can understand them quickly. Also, there are something that's related to maybe literature or something that relates to poems, so you don't get to understand things very easily. But basically, if you have enough reading context, you have enough amount of reading every day, you'll be able to understand them correctly. Also, you'll be asked to use analogical reasoning. Reasoning means that you need to use basic logic to solve problems, and again, that's not very complicated. Also, you'll be asked to cite textual evidence. That means if you want to say that the answer to the first question is A, you need to be 100% sure that the description in A matches, or certain word matches the context, like this word or that word. So it's evidence. That means you can't just say in general it means something, or it makes sense to choose A or to choose B. No, there are textual evidence, so you have to find out that evidence. Also, you'll be asked to determine main ideas and themes. That seems quite easy, but most students answer and choose the wrong main ideas and themes quite easily in the real test. Basically, it's because they got carried away by some content instead of the main idea, like details in the second or the third sentences or the example. So we need to make sure that you get the main ideas correctly. Usually the easy skill is to go back to the first sentence. After you finish reading the first sentence or including the last sentence, you get to understand the main ideas easier than the first time you read it. The next skill is to summarize. To summarize means that you have to finish reading the whole passage and summarize the main idea by yourself. If you don't do this, you got easily carried away by some of the examples in passage as well. So remember, every time you finish reading a passage, you need to summarize the meaning, the themes, the main ideas of a passage by yourself. The next one is to understand relationship. And that refers to the characters, relationship between the characters, or the relationship between each passage. Usually we want to call them cohesion or coherence, but that again is not necessary for students who want to become teachers. You only need to understand the meaning of the passage to solve out the relationships between the passages. The next one is to interpret words and phrases in context. That usually demands skills of wide range of vocabulary. If you don't have enough vocabulary, then probably you find this part being the most difficult. But what we would suggest students to do is to, again, increase your amount of reading in order to achieve that in the shortest period of time. Now, as to content dimension, the rhetoric part, students are asked to analyze word choice, to analyze text structure, and overall part, whole relationship. And also you need to analyze point of view, that means the perspective of the writer. And also you need to analyze the purpose of the passage, but that again is usually included in the first paragraph, so it's pretty easy to find. And then you need to analyze the arguments, including the claims, the counterclaims, the reasoning, and evidence. Now, as to content dimensions, this synthesis part, students are asked to analyze multiple texts as well as quantitative information. Quantitative information refers to the graphs.